Hello! Today's session is going to be some poses we can do to relieve tight hamstrings and also tight hips as well. So we're going to begin by coming onto our backs with the soles of the feet to touch and letting the hips fall out wide, the knees fall out to the side. And you can pop a couple of pillows or blankets under your knees here if this feels too much. Just settling into a comfortable position. Maybe bringing your hands to your chest and your belly. Just connecting in with the breath. As you allow the hips to begin to open. Some nice deep breaths into the hands. Good. And then slowly bringing the knees back together and coming up to a seated position. And then we're going to bring the feet slightly wider than hip width apart. Bring the hands behind us. We're just going to drop the knees to either side. Just nice and controlled. Just breathing into it. Lovely. And then coming in onto all fours. Spreading the fingers nice and wide. And then when you're ready, tucking the toes, pushing the hips up and back into downward facing dog. The first down dog can often be a bit stiff, so again, if you've got tight hamstrings, bend the knees, it's okay. Try and keep the back nice and flat. Try and sink the heels down to the mat. A couple of rounds of breath here. Good. Then we're going to bring the left foot to the outside of the left hand. Perfect. And then we're going to take some movement here. So we're going to bring the left hand to the back of the head. I'm going to try and get the elbow to dip down next to the toe. And then we're going to twist elbow up to the ceiling. Good. So elbow to the floor, twisting open, elbow to the ceiling. Elbow to the floor, elbow to the ceiling. Just take a few more of those in your own time. Good. And then bringing both hands back to the mat, dropping the right knee down this time, untucking the right toes, coming onto the fingertips, keeping the back nice and straight, chest up, feeling that stretch in the right hip flexor. Just breathe here for a couple of rounds of breath. You can maybe experiment here with dropping the left knee out slightly, opening the hip, see how that feels. Good. And pushing back to downward facing dog. And then we're going to switch legs, bringing the right foot to the outside of the right hand, keeping that knee over the ankle. And then bringing the right hand to the back of the head. And again, twisting down, trying to touch the elbow to the floor. And then pointing the elbow up to the ceiling and twist. Elbow to the floor. Elbow to ceiling. Good. Elbow to floor. Elbow to ceiling, twist. Elbow to floor. Elbow to ceiling. Elbow to floor. Ceiling. Just a few more in your own time. Good. And then bringing both hands down, left knee to the mat, and tuck the left toes, coming onto the fingertips, chest up. And releasing into the left hip flexor. Again, you can experiment with dropping the right knee out and lifting the sole of the foot off the mat to see if that feels like a good opening in the hip. And just breathing deeply here. Good. And then bringing the knee back in and pushing back. Downward facing dog. Pedal out the feet. And then bringing the knees to the mat. Bring the toes to touch and knees out wide. And we're just going to sit back onto the heels into wide-legged child pose. Forehead to the mat. Good, and then slowly coming up onto all fours again. I'm going to tuck the toes under, push the hips up and back. And this time we're going to step the right foot in between the hands to a low lunge. Turn that back heel down so that that back foot is parallel to the back of the mat. Then we're going to rise up into Warrior Two. Checking your alignment here, so you want the right heel to be in line with the middle of the back foot. Knee over ankle. Good. And also shoulders over the hips as well. Then we're going to straighten that front leg, the right leg. Inhale and exhale. Bending over that leg, grabbing onto the shin, the ankle, and then looking up at the left hand. Think about pushing the hips forward. You should feel a nice stretch in the inner thigh. Breathing here. And then rising up back into Warrior Two. Straightening that leg, turning the right foot in, left foot out. And we'll do the other side. Straightening that leg. Inhale. And exhale, leaning over that left leg, grabbing onto the ankle or the shin, looking up at the right hand. Feel like you're pushing the hips forward slightly. Nice stretch on the left inner thigh. And coming back to warrior two. And straightening the leg, walking the feet in. Good. So now we'll do pyramid pose. So slightly smaller gap between the feet. Traditionally the heels are in line here, but we want the left foot to sort of be facing the diagonal corner of the mat here, and right foot toes straight ahead. We're going to have a bit more of a gap between the heels this time, so it's a bit easier. I'm going to keep the legs straight, interlock our hands behind our back, roll our shoulders back, inhale. And then exhale, we're going to hinge from the hips, bending forward over that leg. We're just going to stay here with a nice flat back. Breathing deeply. Good. And come up. And then we're going to switch over. So left toes pointing straight. Right toes slightly diagonal. Little gap between the heels. They're not quite aligned. Good. And then rolling the shoulders back, pulling the hands back. Inhaling. And exhale, hinging from the hips over the front leg. Staying here with a flat back. Deep inhales. And then coming up. Lovely. And then we're going to just bring the arms around to the side, releasing the shoulders slightly. Good. Then coming into a wide-legged stance, toes facing straight ahead. Again, we're going to interlock the hands again behind the back, roll the shoulders back, and this time fold forward, letting the hands fall overhead. It's a deep hamstring stretch. If it's too much for the shoulders, you can bring your hands forward to the floor. And breathe deeply. Good. And come up. And then we're going to heel toe our feet in. It's again slightly wider than the shoulders, feet pointing out diagonally. We're going to do a Malasana squat. So sitting down between the feet, firming your outer arms maybe into your knees here. If this is too difficult for you, your hips are too tight, we'll come into a slight froggy type position. You can put the hands on the mat, lift the heels slightly. You can maybe still use your elbows to open the hips. Otherwise, coming back into Malasana, palms in together and keeping the back nice and straight. Just finding a good position for the feet. taking a few rounds of breath here. Perfect. And then heel toeing the feet together. And rolling back up to standing. Good. And then coming to sit on our mats. We'll do head to knee. So bringing the left sole of the foot into the right inner thigh. Right leg out straight, toes pointing upwards. Going to inhale. Lift our arms overhead, twist towards the extended leg. And exhale, fold over that leg. Releasing down. If you need to have a slight bend in the knee, please do. And let the head fall in towards the leg. If you're here, that's absolutely fine. Just wherever you start to feel some sensation in the back of the leg. We'll just stay here for a few rounds of breath. Don't feel like you're pulling yourself into the pose. Just think about releasing and relaxing into it. Just on the exhales, maybe going a bit deeper. Good. And then coming up nice and slowly and switching sides. So bringing the right sole of the foot to the left inner thigh. Again, inhaling, lifting the arms overhead, turning the body to face the extended leg. And exhale, fold over that foot. One side's always more difficult than the other. Just go easy on yourself. It's great if you continue doing these stretches because it's really easy to measure progress and see how much more flexible you're going to get. But just take it nice and slow. Just feeling a nice sensation in the back of the leg. Good. And coming up nice and slowly. Perfect. So now we're going to do deer pose, which is a good hip opener. So bring your right shin parallel with the top of the mat. And left leg, you want your left calf to be in line roughly with the side of the mat. And again, your left thigh about parallel with the top as well. Try and square the hips here. So this might feel like a bit of a stretch for you already. Or you might want to come and fold over that right leg. And just release into that right hip. You might bring your head all the way down. This is one that you really soften into. let your hips start to release. Good, and come back onto your hands if you're folded over. And switching sides. So left shin comes parallel to the top of the mat. Right calf parallel to the side, and you want your right thigh to be roughly parallel with the top as well. If this is too difficult, you can bring your heel in as well, make it slightly easier. You might want to stay here if this already feels like a bit of a stretch. Or, as before, you can come down onto your elbows, maybe bring the forehead down. And releasing into the pose. Feeling the stretch in the left hip, glute. Good. And then slowly coming back up, bringing your legs out in front of you again. We'll do our final forward fold. So hopefully we feel a little bit more release now. Inhaling, arms overhead, and exhale. Fold over the legs, releasing the head in towards the knees to get a stretch in the upper back. And again, holding on to the shins, the ankles, the feet, wherever you can reach. Breathing deeply. Good. And coming up nice and gently. And then we'll move onto our backs. Knees pointing up to the ceiling. And just taking your knees from side to side again, like we did at the beginning. But sitting up. Just letting them drop. Good. And then we'll finish with a figure four stretch again. So right ankle over the left thigh. Stay here if this is good for you. Or you might want to bring your right hand in between your legs and grab onto the left hamstring or the left shin. We'll just hold this. Breathe into the right hip. Lovely. And releasing the left leg, releasing the right ankle and swapping sides. So left ankle over right thigh. Maybe stay here if this is good for you. Or left hand comes in between the legs and we grab onto the right hamstring or the right shin. Breathing deeply. And releasing that left foot, bringing the soles of the feet to the mat again. And we'll finish with some knee circles. So one hand on each knee, and we're going to bring the knees out in opposite directions. Making some nice big circles. Good. And then hugging the knees in, bringing the head towards the knees. And releasing everything down. Feet wide apart, palms facing upwards. Just letting everything go. And that's everything for today. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.